Group 6 Podcast. Conspiracies, mysteries, cover-ups, cryptids. We talk about anything and everything, as long as it's interesting. For more info, any questions, or if you have some spicy info for us to talk about, contact us at group6show@hotmail.com.
So,
Group 6, back at it again.
that we are. We've just planted Illuminati symbols all around the radio studios in a desperate attempt to get people to listen to us. So if you are one of those people, congratulations for being a sucker. We're very happy. Yeah.
So happy.
You look really creepy right now. I wish I could see you.
I wish they could too.
Oh my God, this is perfect.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who this reminds me of. Do you know what? It's its own kind of creepy. It's like you're doing a Brian Peters impression.
Who's that?
I don't know. He was known for this thing that he did a long time ago called the Brian Peters Show.
Sounds like a dork.
Yeah, he was a real jackass, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah. We are here today to talk about Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones.
Now, let me know, Brian, how did you first hear of Indiana Jones? Was it someone that you were brought up... he's a real person. Was it a movie that you were brought up watching, a series you were raised on?
You know, I can't really remember how I really got into it. It's really, really fuzzy because it's been so long since I saw. I can't remember. I couldn't tell you the first one I saw. I'm beginning to think it might have been Last Crusade just because of Sean Connery.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember which one it was for me. It was a while before I saw it. I don't even think I was a kid when I did. But do you know what? I really liked the series, and it holds its ability to entertain because, I was... like 19 or 20 when I distinctly remember sitting down and saying, I've never seen these movies, I got to watch them. And I loved all of them. I watched them all right through. I watched the first one over and over again. That was my favorite. I also liked Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, but wanted to watch them a bit less. Still haven't seen Crystal Skull.
You haven't seen Crystal Skull?
I've made a point of not seeing it. Maybe I'm not qualified to talk about this series then.
Maybe, no, you are, because most people ignore it, but... I'll give you something. What they were going for was tribute to 50s serials, whereas the other ones were, tributes to 30s serials.
Right. They all took place in the 30s, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, this one, Crystal Skull takes place in the 50s. So, watch it for what it is. It's Harrison Ford slipping back into the Indiana Jones role seamlessly, doing a lot of his own stunts. I believe he was 65 at the time.
Okay, yeah.
And you have, the return of Karen Allen as Marion.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
And Shia LaBeouf, let's not talk about him. I mean, he Shia LaBeoufs his way through the movie.
That was before he was as infamous as he was today. And that's saying a lot, isn't it? Because he was pretty infamous back then.
Well, he'd just done the first Transformers.
He was already starting his infamy, I think.
Because the first Transformers came out in 2007. Crystal Skull came out in 2008, so...
Yeah. He's become, I don't know if religious is the right word for it, but he's become more kind of Christian. Not that that's a bad thing in and of itself, but because it's Shia LaBeouf, you worry how he interprets that. Yeah. He's kind of fallen off the face of the earth, I think. He thinks that, God will save him and get his movie career back on track. We got to stop talking about religion. We've already got cults and all this stuff in the works.
Got to figure out a way to suppress these tangents and save them for later.
Well, not just save them for later, probably save our reputations, would probably offend a whole bunch of people. I think my views on a lot of subjects will offend pretty much, and not for the reasons everyone thinks. Everybody thinks of offenses in like cliched political correctness. I think that my views on things are so strange that people would misunderstand them and assume, well, you're one of those people, when really they don't really fit into any category. And they'll, you're one of those people that thinks they don't fit into any category. I know who you are. I can peg you. I can put you right here. But that's what's so hard about expressing your opinion sometimes, is the simplification, don't you think?
I don't know. People seem to be a lot more sensitive these days.
Sensitive for sure. Some would say aware of certain issues, and I would say I just want to know which is which. Getting back to religion, that old prayer, the Alcoholics Anonymous prayer, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What is the difference between something that is offensive and something that is just plain old, how are we putting it? How are we just putting it? Something that's just a controversial opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more the offense, I think, that some people read into things, isn't it?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Misunderstanding of the position that you're holding. But anyway, back to Indiana Jones.
Back to Indiana Jones. One of the reasons I go back to Crystal Skull sometimes, yes, I know it has its flaws. I know it nuked the fridge.
It did.
But it was the first Indiana Jones I had the privilege of seeing in the theater.
Yeah, that would have been a big part of it, I would imagine.
I mean, yeah, I wanted to, I was just excited that Harrison Ford was doing this, and they were finally doing another Indiana Jones. That was the charm of it. I mean, did it disappoint a little? Yeah, but you got to take it. You got to take it for what it is, and what they were trying to do. I mean, it can't be any more far-fetched than the Ark that melts faces. The healing cup of Christ.
Well, we keep getting back into religion. We can't stop.
I
know that's a part of the Indiana Jones movie, but are we fated to be like a religious podcast or something
no,
like that?
No, this isn't religion.
This isn't religion, I swear.
I'm just saying
it's just Jesus and the Ark of the Covenant.
Somebody like me actually finds aliens more plausible than that.
Well, arguably, yeah. But
Not to say that those movies are any more or less good because of their religious artifacts. No, that was the charm of it. Because, one, in that universe, that stuff has its weight.
Yes.
In the universe of the movies.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at what happened to all those Nazis when they opened the Ark. They had the gall and the arrogance to communicate with God face to face.
Well, and don't you also feel that it was because the Nazis were such anti-Semites? And here you have this holy Jewish artifact, the Ark of the Covenant. And I almost see there being a kind of a karma there.
There is a bit of a karma, even though this was predating even the start of the war in that time period. But
yeah,
obviously,
but everyone knew at the time that Hitler was an anti-Semite.
Everybody had that idea just going into that movie because it was made in 1981.
Oh, sure, exactly.
They wanted to sort of, get some revenge on the Nazis in some way.
And on top of that, I think they made great villains because they brought you back to those 1930s and 40s style of movies. And I think there were a lot of World War II movies coming out during World War II. It wasn't just a post-World War II thing. They probably made more then that were World War II focused, usually kind of propaganda-centered, but it was still, a big genre. And in a sense, that was why it was the ultimate 30s, 40s adventure serial movie. Because it threw everything together. And again, the mysticism of the Ark of the Covenant, that does have a bit more of a, how in Star Wars people complained about the midichlorians. Some people maybe thought that aliens were making the universe too down to earth. Whereas with the Ark of the Covenant, it's mysterious and it's mystical and it goes along with that sort of unexplained thing.
I should have interjected there, but in the movie, it's not actually aliens, it's interdimensional beings that use a flying saucer.
Is that better or worse?
I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Yeah, basically.
I did enjoy the angle of tying into Roswell in Area 51, though. I thought that was neat, just being one of those guys that is interested in that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was cool that the backstory was Indy was one of the people that saw some weird shit at Area 51.
I think what's his name? You know who? He's got some very strong views on Area 51, doesn't he? Jesse
Ventura. No, the Indiana Jones was a true story. I mean, that all happened one day back in the day. I did a show about Area 51, and they wouldn't, they have all these orange poles. They didn't have those back in the day. I mean, that was just a regular air base, and now why is it so secretive? Why won't they let anybody in, even me, a former governor, a Navy SEAL?
Where were you governor, Mr. Ventura?
Minnesota.
Well, what does that have to do with Area 51 then?
I don't know. I was an elected official, a politician.
You're fond of saying this. You really are, but I'm trying to understand how it's relevant to a Area 51. It wasn't really your jurisdiction, was it?
I don't know either. I'm just guessing. Why doesn't even the president get to go in there and say anything? Or if he does, you never hear about the president going to Area 51, do you?
No, but maybe he's got more important things to do.
Like what?
Like run the country?
Run?
Like worry about, the economy or, security. Or...
I'll show you how to run a country. You vote Ventura for 2016, get me ballot access across all 50 states.
That's a world that I don't want to imagine having to live in, Mr. Ventura. I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, you keep laughing.
You know what? Yeah, he is right about one thing, though, and that's I shouldn't have said that thing about, security. U.S. has never been too concerned about security, just about fear. God damn it, all those things they make you do at airports. Not really for anything, are they?
No. See, now we're back again to conspiracies. But no.
Yeah,
really...
but I gladly go along with it. I respect the law wherever I go because I understand that realistically you got to do that.
Yeah, realistically. We can get into Big Brother later.
Yeah.
If you've read 1984.
Oh, I have.
We got to talk about 1984 later on in the future.
We got it. We got to make that a podcast. But Indiana Jones, one thing that was good about it was the fact that it didn't get so much into the heavy stuff.
No.
It was very light.
It's a very lighthearted, a fun ride.
Yeah. Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote the screenplay for the original Indiana Jones, complained that they had to simplify the plot and cut out a whole bunch of his character scenes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. That was apparently a big beef with him. Now, he obviously did Empire Strikes Back, and I think he's worked on these new Star Wars movies that are coming out this year.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Episode 7 anyway, the first of them. And yeah, I really believe that that works for it, though, as well as against it in some ways, because it's just a pure adventure story, and it does it so well. It's just one adventure after another.
I think in the final project, the final product of Raiders, there was enough character.
Oh, there was enough for sure.
I mean, you get the sense
if you have none, there's nothing to inspire you to watch the movie.
You get the sense that he's this fallible and human hero.
Yes, very much so.
He gets beat up, he gets hurt, he gets exhausted. Hence, the
almost too much. That was one of the only things that I didn't like about it, is because he almost got scuffled up a bit too much, and the fact he was inactive at the end, he just kind of the only impact he really had is he said, "Shut your eyes, Marianne," and then that saved their lives.
Some of that came from circumstances in filming as well.
Sure.
Like the scene with the sword fighter.
Oh yeah, I know the story.
You know the story?
Yeah.
For those of you who don't, basically what happened was in Egypt, a whole bunch of people involved with the shooting of the movie, including Steven Spielberg, Harrison Ford, John Rhys Davies, who played Sala, of course. Mm-hmm. You might know him as Gimli in Lord of the Rings. Anyway, they all caught dysentery. So they were pretty much leaking out the, rear end.
You could say.
Harrison Ford had to go back to his
Was
trailer
it
a lot.
dysentery? I didn't know that was what it was.
That's from what I've read.
Yeah, but I know I know they had a good a sword fight plan for that scene. It was this big event, right? Wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That guy wielding the sword, he had practiced all these different moves, and they were going to have a huge set piece out of it, weren't they? And then because Harrison was too weak,
He's too sick, too weak. He didn't really want to do that. He suggested just to Spielberg, why don't I just pull out my gun and shoot him?
yeah. And probably the guy with the sword was really pissed because he lost his big scene. But do you know what? I think it's more memorable now.
It is more memorable.
Yeah.
And the best things in movies tend to happen by accident.
Oh, so many things. Like, the most famous example probably being Jaws, not seeing the shark.
The shark, because the shark is not working.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. Film is such a collaborative process.
And now they have it's called the Jaws effect now.
Yeah.
Where you don't show whatever it is. They used that to great effect in the new Godzilla, I felt. There was all that build up until you finally see Godzilla.
Well, that's interesting because then that's an influence that Indy had on later movies. Though you always think of it as being kind of backwards looking, taking from movies more than it innovated. But I guess that it's also been a force for change in the movies that came after it. What ways has it kind of affected the film industry, would you say?
I really couldn't tell you specifically. I mean, it changed a lot of things. They really set the bar for effects and stunt work and all that.
Because that was early blue screen work they did in it too. I don't know. Well, they've had the stuff since the 50s, and then back projection before that. But
And Harrison really, he was the one who, I think he's one of the original notable stars to do a lot of his own stunts and really get down and dirty.
Yeah.
Just because he wanted it to look real. He wanted it to seem real.
Sure. Yeah.
He wanted to seem like he was this guy. Once again, that humanized it a lot more.
Well, and I think Harrison himself would be able to relate to it. Wasn't he just a humble carpenter on the set of? I don't remember which movies it was that he was working on.
Oh, he did. He was a carpenter. It was one of his skills. And he was...
Well, he was in the film industry as a minor bit player or something, and then he left.
And he worked... I think he did work on a few sets. I think he was doing some carpentry for George Lucas.
It was either Lucas or Coppola. It was one of the two.
I think so. But anyway, he'd already worked with Lucas on American Graffiti.
Yeah.
And, George was like... It's so funny every time. He's like, oh, I don't want to use Harrison Ford again.
Yeah, that's right.
But then he was like, why don't you come and do the role of Han Solo for all these guys that are auditioning? Eventually he just got used to it. And so he's like, okay, you can be Han Solo.
And then everyone thought he was the best actor in the movie.
Mm-hmm. And then the same thing went for Indiana Jones, because that was Spielberg's really first real suggestion. Oh, why don't you get Harrison Ford to play him? He's like, no, I don't want him to be my Bobby De Niro. That's what George Lucas said.
Yeah.
But eventually
he
relented, and it was the unfortunate thing with Tom Selleck, because Tom Selleck was going to take the role, really. But then the whole contract with Magnum PI, he'd just done the pilot. And
there are a few movies like that. Was it Back to the Future? They shot half the movie with this other guy in the role.
They shot half the movie with Eric Stoltz, he's a good actor in his own right, but the tone of it was... The tone was just a tad darker than I think what Robert Zemeckis ended up really wanting, and they both agreed it wasn't going to work out. So let's work around Michael J. Fox's schedule.
Yeah, you know what? That is one of those movies that I think would fall apart if you treated it seriously, really, really seriously. Back to the Future, I think it's lighthearted material,
it's
but
really interesting.
But it's good natured. Yeah,
it's really interesting to see all that deleted footage of him as Marty, though.
Yeah, well, I've seen. I don't know if I've seen a lot of it, but I have seen bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
And
is there any place you can go online and see a whole bunch of the lost scenes?
You can find YouTube. You can YouTube it.
Yeah.
And then somebody made a comic, like an alternate version comic book of how it would be like
Right.
if Eric Stoltz was still in the role.
Yeah.
They did that with one of George Lucas's early drafts of Star Wars as well.
I've not read it yet, but I did hear about that, and I'm really curious
Seems
to
like
see
an
it.
interesting comic.
Really an interesting idea, because I've heard that even though George Lucas might not be known as the greatest writer around, that early draft of Star Wars was really good in some ways, better than all of the drafts that he did afterwards. But the movie, of course, was great. You know,
turned out great.
the cutting and the editing and the charisma of the actors, that was huge. But the original script was apparently fantastic, but people didn't get it because it was a comic book movie, and that was in the pre-comic book movie days, I guess you could say. People just weren't ready for that kind of thing. And so Francis Ford Coppola, actually, one of his only supporters, got after him and went like, "Why are you changing it?" When George wrote all of these different scripts for Star Wars, and he was just like, "Well, none of my friends really like it, you know." But you know, this was apparently fantastic. So yeah, maybe some of you guys have actually read that comic, because I think it's been out for a couple of years now, hasn't it?
It's been out for maybe a year or two. I read about it. I can't remember. I couldn't tell you when. It was a while ago.
I think it was 2 years ago. You know, that I first.
And it got me very interested because I read a few frames of it. Just you know, it's weird to see an interesting take, and you don't get those many chances to look into a sort of an alternate universe. So you know how this would have happened.
Well, yeah, sure, because there are all these different movies the path could have gone down. Like Han Solo could have had green skin and gills.
What if we had a more book faithful version of Jurassic Park, for instance?
Oh, well, then half the movie, would have been different.
It would have been extremely violent.
Would have been longer.
And think about it. James Cameron wanted to get the rights to Jurassic Park. I think it would have been really cool. It would have been basically aliens with dinosaurs.
Yeah, do you know what? He'd do a good, faithful adaptation of Jurassic Park. Spielbergized it, and it worked. Like
it was
worked.
a blockbuster,
Yeah.
and really undisputable how successful it was,
Yeah.
and how great it is.
I think he got the rights to it before Crichton finished the book.
He did, yeah, because he was like, but really though.
Well, I mean,
when you read the book, you think, wow, this would be such a compelling movie too.
Oh, it really would be
if you left in some more of those elements.
They're both like Indiana Jones, actually. The Jurassic Park, the Spielberg version, and those movies, because there's not really much character in them. There's a bit, like you said, but even in Jurassic Park, you know, there's less probably actually. It's just a very straightforward story, but it's very well paced and very suspenseful. And I think Crichton wasn't a character man at all. He would admit that probably if he were still around. But he was very cerebral. And James Cameron, while not being the most cerebral man around himself, would definitely have been able to respect the kind of the dark, gritty tone that he had that isn't Spielberg's thing as much.
Yeah. I guarantee you John Hammond would be dead.
Oh, for sure.
And I think some of the other characters would have stayed around.
Eaten alive by his own creation. Isn't that how it goes in the book?
Yeah. Copies get him.
Do you know, even though Jurassic Park, as a kid in the 90s, it was all around me, I remember all of the promos for it. Not a movie that I saw. As a huge dinosaur kid, loved it, knew everything about dinosaurs there was to know, never saw the film until after I read the book. Jurassic Park 3 was actually the first one that I saw. I think I saw parts of The Lost World when it came out. That was 97, I think that one came out. But I didn't watch the whole thing, start to end, as far as I can remember. And a friend of mine was a huge Crichton fan, and he, kind of a precocious kid, and he lent me the book. And I read through that, and I was really too young at 12 years old. Yeah. I found it really dry.
To really understand all the elements.
What Malcolm, and his
everything
rants.
Malcolm talks about, he is just... He's way up to 11, like in that book, and oddly enough, I think that casting would have still been good if they had gone full book. Jeff Goldblum did it perfect.
Jeff Goldblum was great. That is his role. He's he was actually. I don't know if you were going to interject there. Oh, no. The Fly was my role because I got top billing in that film.
So you two dig up dinosaurs?
Right. Jeff Goldblum, I can't decide whether he's the most narcissistic man in Hollywood or the most likable crazy nerd. I
don't know.
I honestly don't know.
I love him. I think. Did you hear?
I like him.
Did you-
I do. I genuinely do.
Did you hear he's going to be in the Independence Day sequel?
I did, but I don't know if they'll ever make it because it keeps getting put off.
2016 is what I hear. I hear it's going to be next year. Then again, they should be getting on that soon.
Well, no, it's just because like they've thought that they were going to do a sequel for a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know, unless they did a really good sequel, I don't know that I'd want to see it.
Well, maybe that's why they're gestating it.
Because Independence Day wasn't a movie that I really liked. I felt that if it were about half the length, it would have been good.
Yeah.
But they were one of those, Dean Devlin and Roald Emmerich. They were those directors and writers who, they took it seriously, and frankly, they don't have the talent to take movies seriously. And they added all these character scenes, like with the president's wife. They rescue her only for her to die, and it means nothing in the overall.
Doesn't affect him,
the
and it
story.
doesn't affect the president in any way.
Yeah.
But of course, it's Bill Pullman we're talking about.
Yeah.
Today we celebrate our Independence Day.
Actually, that pissed me off when I was a kid because it was just the most arrogant. Oh, finally, you get to be Americans too, sort of like that kind of thing.
And what was? How did he get? How could any president, even in fiction, get away with hopping into a plane and fighting in the battle? As cool as it is, it does.
Well, I mean, that's not the point of the movie, is it?
It's not. It's not something to think about.
The movie is at its best, I think, when there's that chase scene with Will Smith and he punches the alien in the face. And
Welcome
he's like,
to Earth.
That was perfect. That scene, as much as I was not a huge fan of the movie, that scene is almost enough to redeem the whole thing because he's so charismatic. The way he does it, it's just.
I'm really sad.
And the scene where he wakes up, and he's just reading the newspaper and turns around, and the whole thing is.
I'm kind of disappointed he doesn't want to do the sequel, but I can see why.
Well, he probably knows it could, ruin his career. Not that his career isn't already kind of downhill, but that was his choice when he took a hiatus, and I don't fault him for that.
I think that not to offend him, I know that he wants to involve his kids a lot, but it seems a bit like nepotism going on.
It absolutely is, and it's hurt him, which is a shame because he's a good actor.
He is an incredible actor. 7 pounds, just great. And I even liked Men in Black 3.
Well, anything with Will Smith in it is going to have a redeeming feature.
And Pursuit of Happiness, incredible film.
Oh, that was great. That was my favorite film of his. I would say.
When he really acts, you believe him, and I couldn't say enough good things about Will Smith. I loved Hancock even.
I never saw that one.
He's a superhero in that one.
Yeah.
It's more of like a cynical, darker version of superhero movies. He's this superhero who's really sick of being a hero, and he's an alcoholic, and he ends up destroying a lot of stuff. So he has to clean up, or clean himself up, and he does, and then he ends up.
Although that kind of reminds me of Iron Man. Not that Iron Man's a cynical movie, but that the party boy superhero. Which
he wasn't really a party boy in that. He was just basically living in a trailer, being a bum on the street.
No. I mean Iron Man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's still two different things, because Iron Man is, like you said, that rich playboy.
Mm-hmm.
Rich playboy. He fits the mold of Bruce Wayne and all those other guys.
Sure, but more of an not an asshole than Bruce Wayne, but
he has his vices, but
he's less likable in a traditional way. Iron Man. Although I don't find that bad. I think that there's too much emphasis in having a sympathetic protagonist. I think that the success of those movies is proof.
They go kind of semi-serious when they do address his drinking in the Iron Man movies, but it's kind of glossed over a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's for kids, but.
Well, no, and that's what I'm saying. Like Iron Man's not cynical, but the character is.
He's a very unabashed playboy.
Yeah, no, he's kind of self-centered, and he milks a celebrity, but that's realistic because most people would do that.
It's not like Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne just uses that as his mask.
Exactly.
But with Hancock is really it's really played to comedy style. It's all superhero pratfalls. Because you imagine if Superman was an aloof drunk.
Yeah.
That's about the damage he causes. The city gets sick of Hancock, so.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of vaguely is No, not really. Not really. I don't remember the movie well enough to be able to say. I was going to say Megamind, but that's a totally different thing. The Brad Pitt character, kind of. But that's just how Megamind saw him, maybe. I'm getting on a tangent now with that. Did you ever see that movie?
Megamind?
Yeah, it was like a cartoon,
I
a
didn't.
CG
I didn't
thing.
watch that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. Apparently, they used it in criminology classes in university to kind of understand how villains are made. Definitely an uncynical movie, and a very good movie, I think.
What was I thinking of? When you talked about the situation with Indiana Jones and Tom Selleck and all that, and how sometimes actors end up having these events that put them in that place.
Yeah.
That what it also reminded me of was how Timothy Dalton became James Bond.
Oh, sure.
Because in Living Daylights, Pierce Brosnan was very close to signing that contract. Pierce Brosnan could have been James Bond earlier. He could have been James Bond in 1987.
What we would have missed.
But what happened was the Remington Steele contract, and they were like about to end the series, but then there was this 60-day thing, a 60-day wait to bring back the series. But
he probably wouldn't have been Mrs. Doubtfire if he had been James Bond then. Or you know,
the publicity and that at that point worked against him because it was all public. Oh, Remington Steele's going to be the next James Bond. Like they're about to sign the contract. It ended up bringing up the ratings on Remington Steele reruns, and I think maybe that latest season.
Oh, that was what it was.
So in the 11th hour on the 60th day, they decided to renew Pierce Brosnan's contract. So they couldn't work the schedule around for Living Daylights, apparently, but I think Cubby Broccoli tried to negotiate.
Yeah.
But it was like, well, he's with us. He's got to do Remington Steele.
When I was a teenager, I liked Living Daylights. I don't know if it would hold up now, but it's a different Bond. It's more intense and violent.
It's more bookish.
Yeah.
It's more bookish, and really, Timothy Dalton is quite ahead of his time because he's doing what Daniel Craig's trying to do.
Yes.
Definitely. License to Kill was good too, as well.
Yes.
I mean, people really panned that movie because it was a product of Miami Vice sensibilities, but really, I loved the tagline. His dark side is.
I was trying to remember which one that I saw. It was in the Middle East, the one I saw, the Timothy Dalton one. I don't think I've seen
that
both
would be
of them.
Living Daylights.
Okay, yeah.
Because he fights with the Mujahideen.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that. It was entertaining.
Yeah.
I watched that when I was like 14 or something. You know, me and my dad and my grandfather, 3 generations of Taylor. Should I give away my name on this podcast? Are we taking it seriously?
Well, now the government's gonna find us. They know we're talking about conspiracies.
Yeah, Mr. Ventura, you're right. I've been a fool. I'm too trusting. That's my problem.
Don't trust anyone. You think you can trust anybody? Think again.
I know, especially an elected official, right?
Yeah, except me because I'm a good guy. They don't like me. The establishment, oh, no, they want to shut me up.
That's why you went off the grid.
Ah!
Oh, I love it. I love, people are like, well, journalists are trying to lie to you. It's like, okay, fair. What about you? Oh, I'm not a journalist. You're claiming to speak the truth about something, or at least you're looking into it.
I'll get my team on that immediately.
Yeah, Mr. Ventura. I wouldn't put it past you. Anyway, we were on Indiana Jones, and we keep getting away from it.
Yeah, well, no, this is really a good discussion because we're talking about, all
the movies in that
all the movies in that mold. Like, yeah, the Tom Selleck thing got us off track because
adventures across the world. That's a genre that you don't see so much of anymore. I kind of understand why, because they don't want to get into that like Victorian racist kind of thing. A lot of those, like early stories really were like, The Lost World, their book of The Lost World. If you've ever read that,
I haven't read it.
Yeah,
but
no,
I've seen different versions of like.
It's a product of its time. Let's just say. Although I love the main character, like Professor Challenger.
King Kong too.
Oh, sure, yeah, of course. But the Lost World was, I guess, a bit closer to that kind of Victorian scientific racism, and you do have elements of it. And I think people want to avoid doing that. So the 1980s. I'm not saying that was the the latest that those movies could have been made, the latest time that those movies could have been made, but I do feel they probably get away with more because they were coming out with them then. That old-fashioned, but yet there's something really appealing about having an adventure story not set in a fantasy world but in this world that kind of trotting across the globe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved that kind of story when I was a kid. It was one of my favorite genres.
That's great, and since we're on Indiana Jones, I think the possibility of having some great throwback adventure films is upon us. Because with Disney, they have the rights to Indiana Jones, as you know.
Oh, yeah. All the Lucasfilm
with Star
stuff.
Wars, because George Lucas sold off everything under the sun of Lucasfilm. Well, they have plans, I guess. I wouldn't put it past them to do another Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah. Harrison Ford said he'd be up for that.
It's in. I think it's in his contract.
Oh, that he has to do it.
Well, it's not. No, he wants to do another Indiana Jones. He said, "I'll do another Star Wars, but we should really, get to making another Indiana Jones before, Well, I still got some steam left.
For sure.
He's 72 now, but he's always appeared at 10 years younger, both in body and mind, in spirit and looks.
Yeah.
I really respect him.
And, he is indie. He's one of those characters that you couldn't put anyone else in there and have it work.
He's not like James Bond, really.
No, absolutely not.
I mean,
even though they're like James Bond movies, aren't they? They're kind of self-contained.
Yeah. But from its inception, Indiana Jones didn't come from any books or anything. It was created by George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and really Harrison Ford is the first guy to really embody it. Whereas
that was how it. Maybe I'm actually thinking of another franchise, but I don't think so. I think it actually was Bond. Spielberg said he wanted to do a Bond movie, and then Lucas told him, "I have something like it,"
That's what he said.
Something better. Yeah.
And that in turn led to Sean Connery playing Indy's dad. Because they said, obviously, James Bond is spiritually the father of Indiana Jones, so why don't we get James Bond to play his dad?
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't disagree with that. That was brilliant casting.
That was very brilliant casting, and Connery did a great job.
Yeah, it's a kind of and brilliant too, because he wasn't Bond. He was that clueless, dotty old professor, and it worked wonderfully. It really did. But he's also self-absorbed, and so it's this like slightly detached academic, absent-minded guy that's
It turns into this really
this cute kind of father and son story.
There's buddy comedy elements into that, and I like that element.
Yeah,
that's why I picked that as my personal favorite.
It's got the most humanity in it for sure.
That scene where he thinks Indy's dead, he's gone off the cliff, said so much in just a couple seconds.
Yeah, Well, and that became talking about how the movies influenced other movies. That became kind of a cliche, didn't it?
He says, I wish I could have told him. 5 minutes would have been enough.
Yeah. That's like a Disney death, though, isn't it?
I thought I lost ya, boy. And then it turns on the tables when he's shot, and Indy goes and does the trials.
Yeah.
To save his dad.
Yeah.
I mean, they regain their respect for each other, and it's, it's partly about the journey of them mending their relationship.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And the end of the whole series, really, in our hearts, Crystal Skull, it's hard for that to count in the minds of a lot of fans.
I'm gonna lump it in. I don't feel like you should.
I'm not saying it's not a part of the series. I'm just saying that it's hard for people to look at it.
I know, but a lot of people
the same way.
A lot of people want to forget it happened. I mean, riding off into the sunset at the end of Last Crusade was a perfect ending to that trilogy. But the fact is, we got a fourth Indiana Jones because people wanted a fourth Indiana Jones. They got what they wanted.
Do you know what? Maybe people need to kind of face up to that more. That, the decisions that filmmakers are their decisions, and anyone can take it any way they want. Like, we were having a conversation earlier, not in this podcast, about the Hitman series. And I remember you were talking about the barcode on their head wasn't accurate to certain details. And we basically concluded that, it might bother a fan, but it won't bother someone that knows nothing.
It won't bother Joe Public,
Yeah.
who wants to see an action movie.
But like, why can't Joe Public be Joe Public and the fans can be the fans and they all take what they want or leave what they want? Isn't that the way to make maximum people happy?
Yeah, I don't know. But with the case of the new Hitman movie, there's just some really abysmal and
Well, because you're a fan
changes.
of Hitman. I'm a fan of the old Indiana
Yeah,
Jones.
they're unnecessary changes, though. It's like
So it's like the attitude of the people that made it.
It's like if they did a new Indiana Jones, but the hat was slightly different.
So
If it was a slightly different fedora, maybe.
Do you know what? Do you know what I think it is? I think it depends on how iconic that is to you. Because like for me, I have to admit, a slightly different fedora. That's because he's an icon to me, and it feels like, well, why are you changing that? I'm attached to that. It doesn't make the movie any worse. It doesn't make the movie any worse.
I know that, but
yeah.
why call it Indiana Jones?
I can see what you're saying.
That's a trademark. Hitman
But there are similarities other than how it physically looks, though.
But I'm just saying that.
I'm mostly playing devil's advocate because I know that a lot of.
If you're a fan of Hitman,
Yeah.
though, that's a different beast. I mean, people love this game. They love the character, and this character means something to them because he's kind of I don't know. He's just a real emotionless, but at the same time very emotional character. But he has the trademark bald head, barcode on the back of his head. But now you have this movie adaptation, the second go around, whereas the first one got the aesthetic right. The second movie, you've got a buzz cut head, which there's still some stubble left, and the barcode is not black ink, it's some gold color, and it's on the back of his neck and not his head.
It's interesting you bring up aesthetic because you know what? I think that's one big reason why people were not as big on the Hobbit movies as they were on Lord of the Rings. They were still big on them, mixed reviews, but the public still loved them. But the more CG they threw in there, the less Middle Earth felt like the textured, beautiful Middle Earth world there was. Like, and I think you're right again to bring up aesthetics. It's a huge part of the appeal for movies for so many people. For me, a lot of the appeal of Lord of the Rings is that aesthetic. It's that rich, beautiful world as imagined by Alan Lee and John Howe from the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien. And when you change the world to make it look kind of more cartoony, it might be fair, as a personal choice, and it might be okay, as a different take on the universe and the world. But is it going to appeal in the same way? Does it have the same visceral reaction that the kind of visual art in the original Lord of the Rings movies had?
Yeah, I just judging from what I've seen of them, I can definitely sympathize. The practical effects in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy were excellent.
Yeah, and unusual for their time. That was when they were falling by the wayside.
And it's definitely a shame that these prequels are resorting to more CG. But I think Peter Jackson's really, and he stated before, I didn't really want to do this.
Yeah.
But people were clamoring for, a Hobbit series.
Well, I mean, Guillermo del Toro was going to do it, and then he, stepped in just to save it, and he almost didn't. Like, it was not inevitable, apparently. He was just like, I really don't know if I want to go back.
It's kind of the same problem that people had with Die Another Day.
That
was a CG crap fest.
They needed to make up for Tomorrow Never Dies or The World Is Not Enough.
I don't know, but for years, James Bond movies prided themselves on minimal computer effects, doing stunts for real, real as they can get. And
I like the sword fight in Die Another Day, though.
That was all right. And basically all they did with that was they did a good sword fight and they sped up the film slightly.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad they're going back to the basics for like the latest ones.
Yeah, but do you know what? It reminds me a little bit of the more ridiculous early Bond movies, like the Ice Castle and Die Another Day.
Yeah.
So I can sense that. I think
once again that's a complete set too.
Oh, is it?
Ice Castle's a set.
Really?
I'm just saying a lot of the
That's
stuff was like there's some abysmal, really ridiculous and CGI elements like the laser in space and there's just a lot of things to nitpick about it. I think we're getting off the topic though.
No, it's us. We're always going to be getting off the topics.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's good for
This is
discussion.
Group 6. It's wild. It's crazy. You know what to expect from us.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
it's not really wild. It's very...
it's good that we're not just going straight, and we can discuss things and go off on tangents and, you know, give our insight on different points. But anyway, I was saying earlier about how we might be seeing a comeback to adventure movies.
Yeah.
And
Which I would love, by the way. Huge fan
well,
of them.
you could be right, because like I said, there's supposed to be a 5th Indiana Jones movie in the works. Whether or not Harrison Ford is rumored to have as a condition to really get started on this Indiana Jones after I do Star Wars.
Yeah.
But then the news came out that they may be trying to, quote, reboot Indiana Jones with Chris Pratt as the title character.
Reboot Indiana Jones with Chris Pratt. Is that the character that LaBeouf played? Let me get my bearings about this.
No, they're not going to do Indy's son, but they're going to do Indiana Jones. New Indiana Jones, but the new actor playing him.
As in, like when he did scare quotes around the word reboot in real life here. So I'm trying to figure out.
I don't think that they want to do that personally, especially if Steven Spielberg is involved, like he's rumored to be. What I think it's going to be is they're going to delve into stuff before Temple of Doom, Raiders, and all that.
Yeah.
And maybe stuff that maybe fill in the gaps between where the Young Indiana Jones series ends and where, you know, Temple of Doom begins.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff to fill in there, because if you look at like the Indiana Jones wiki, they really Indiana Jones has a lot of adventures that haven't been tapped, or they've been in books or video games and all that. But there's definitely a great angle to go. Maybe what they could do is have a parallel plot line. Have maybe something Indiana Jones is looking for in his old age.
Interesting.
And have that way Harrison Ford can open bookend, do whatever.
Okay.
But then they could, the plot could tie into his past. It could be an artifact. Maybe the MacGuffin can be.
Do you know what? I like that idea. And
then you have Chris Pratt.
Yes.
Filling in the gap and I don't think there's anybody right now, any actor right now, that could give the essence than Chris Pratt. Because if you watch Guardians, you know, you've seen Guardians.
Yeah.
I've seen Guardians. He really emulates or maybe gives off that vibe of an Indiana Jones meets Han Solo when he plays Star-Lord.
Yeah, he was. I thought more Han Solo, but
Yeah.
is it Han or Han? I say both.
It's Han. Everybody says
Han.
Han.
Han. I don't know why I said. I'm so. You know, I guess a lot of people from Canadian, like older people from Canada. Yeah, it was everything. Apparently, my great grandparents said, you know, the Pam trees and things like that. Like they were that Canadian.
Pam trees.
And my mother would say things like pasta, pajamas, and what
sometimes
else?
say
Halloween
pasta.
instead of Halloween. Yeah, well, I do too. I have to admit, but I never said drama instead of drama. Some people, I kid you not.
Yeah, I say drama.
Yeah, you know, but like some people actually say drama. Like where I was from, at the Catholic school we said drama, and the kids at the public school said drama. So it was like a crosstown dialect thing. It was weird.
What was I thinking of? So back to this idea of the reboot. I don't think it's going to be a reboot. I think it's going to be, you know, some storyline that we haven't been to.
Yeah.
For Indiana Jones. Here's a good idea. Why don't they have some young actress play Marion? Because if you read about Indiana Jones, and there's a whole backstory to Marion, like they only touch on it a little bit in the Raiders, where she says, "I was a child, I was in love," but you don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what that means, but there's the character of Abner Ravenwood. You haven't seen him yet, right? He's just mentioned because it's Marion's dad.
Yeah.
Well, if you read like Indy's wiki or something, there's lots of fill-in material, expanded universe stuff that says Yeah, when Indy was in his mid-20s, he studied and went on a few archaeological digs with Abner Ravenwood.
Huh.
And he met Marion, and she was about 14, 15.
Because you know what? They really imply like there's this big backstory, but they never talk about it.
She says, I was a child. I was in love.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you knew what you were doing.
In any modern franchise, you would see that. You would eventually see that.
I don't think they slept together, because then that would just make Indy a creep.
Oh, you mean like when they were younger?
I mean,
yeah.
Because that's the whole thing, that they had a romance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it went as far as some people are think. Oh, Indy went pedophile. I don't think it was like that. I think they're equals, and they really seem like equals in Raiders. And then when she shows up in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to that, they could go to that story.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be cool. And like I said, expected really nowadays when you have something like that, you don't leave so much implied anymore.
As touchy as a 10-year age difference would be, like Indiana Jones at 24 having a romance with a 14-year-old Marion.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the people knowing what it becomes, they can stomach it better, because it becomes this love between two equals. Then later on they have this son, and it brings them back together, and they end up getting married.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll be hard to pull off if you did it from a romance point
But
of view.
this romance gets cut short, and it breaks up Indy's and Abner Ravenwood's relationship, like their kind of mentor, maybe surrogate father relationship.
You were talking about this, and it kind of went over my head. I never did the math. I didn't realize it should be 14.
About that, I think that was the estimate.
Well, I mean, they can fudge the canon a little bit, can't they?
Maybe. Here's a cool idea. Why don't they have Tom Selleck come and play Abner Ravenwood? I mean,
maybe
he missed the chance to play Indiana Jones, and Steven Spielberg once said, "I owe you a part."
That would be a cool fan reference.
Well, there is some concept art from one of the indie games where Abner is he's kind of an Indiana-esque character. He wears a fedora, and he's kind of gruff-looking and has a mustache. Sort of resembles Tom Selleck in a way.
Yeah.
I think that would be perfect, and Tom Selleck could totally do it. He could totally be that, tough father figure, but then he says, you're encroaching on my daughter's space, and she's young, so we can't be friends. But he would probably
but you need to make Indy sympathetic. Like, he doesn't really want, like, maybe Marion has kind of puppy love for him, and then the emphasis on her. I was 14, I was in love. But then, for altruistic reasons, he needs to forge some kind of connection with her for some reason. Like, I mean, I just wouldn't want him to be, like, portrayed, like you say, as a creep. And it would be really hard to get around that.
But
it's such an obvious choice of something to explore as a film. It really is.
That'd be a great idea.
Yeah. And it's a canonical film that, like, really stood alongside,
and
would stand alongside the other ones.
Indy's dad could still show up. It wouldn't have to be Sean Connery.
Sure.
It could be Lloyd Owen, because Lloyd Owen played him very well in the Indiana Jones, Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of brought the Sean Connery air. He had the Scottish brogue.
Yes.
But he didn't do an imitation. He kind of embodied the role.
Yeah.
So I don't think there should be a problem with getting a new actor to play Indiana Jones. What about you? I know it's a touchy subject because Harrison Ford is very much loved.
Well, you know what? I think that under those circumstances, definitely, I wouldn't, recommend rebooting the series, because if you if you did another actor at the same age as Indy in the original movies, would not work. No, because we have grown so attached. Like you said about the barcode or the fedora. You can't change those because they are so iconic, and so strongly associated with what the character is.
That Photoshop of Chris Pratt as Indiana Jones it looks amazing. Have you seen it?
No, never seen it.
I'm gonna find it. Keep talking. I'll show it to you.
Okay.
We got to get your reaction.
All right, Brian's gonna get it on his phone. But yeah, I think it's such an obvious thing to do. Like I've been saying, and it's. the best way of keeping the franchise alive, making the studio execs happy,
and referencing the other movies,
keeping
the spirit, and
when not making fans angry. It would be perfect.
Having a good actor do it.
Yes.
The only other guy I could see, some people may know about Anthony and Gruber. I told you about him. Mm-hmm. He's this YouTuber, and he does impressions.
Yeah.
Well, he looks like a dead ringer for a young Harrison Ford. That can be good. In some ways, that can be bad because he can do the voice and all that. Can he embody Indiana Jones, or is he just going to do an impression? That's the only question.
Yeah.
That's the only question. But the guy did get a big break. He's in the movie Age of Adeline. Mm-hmm. I won't go into what the movie's about, but it has Blake Lively and Harrison Ford in some starring roles. He plays the younger version of Harrison Ford's character.
Yeah.
And they've met and all that, blah, blah, blah. I think he'd be a good choice for a young Indiana Jones. I think he'd be one of the best choices just because he is a good actor. Or maybe he can play a young Han Solo in the spin-off for the Star Wars spin-off they're doing. But anyway, aside from that, I definitely would not be angry with Chris Pratt as Indiana Jones. I mean, I saw that picture and I loved it. And I mean, the guy can act and he can do that swashbuckling hero. Because he really is. That's what Indy is.
Let's get the picture up. I gotta see this.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab it. Yeah. So what do you think? What's your personal opinion on what this rumored plan is to be for Indiana Jones?
Well, my prediction, I wouldn't say this is an opinion so much. My prediction is that it will get shelved because things like this, they want to do right or not do at all. It's going to be like, I think, Independence Day in that way. I do think that if they find a story that works and a concept that works, they will make it and they won't dawdle. That might be hard. There's the creep factor we discussed. Other than that, I don't see any problems with the ideas that we put forward, but maybe they have something else in mind, or they've dismissed that for whatever reason as a background story. So I think that they've got to be really careful, and they know that as a studio.
Here, I got it. Now have a look. Now give me your reaction on this picture.
That is scarily accurate. Do you know what? Honest to God, I had to do a double take. And I know that's, because it's on Harrison Ford's body, but I had to do a double take.
All he needs is some scar makeup on the chin, because Harrison Ford has that distinct scar on the chin, which they added to Indy's backstory in Last Crusade.
If he can pull that off and do it with the same kind of body language and charisma not even charisma, presence that Harrison Ford had, then he will be the perfect choice if they choose him.
I don't doubt they're going to keep the same costume too. That exact costume.
Yeah.
I mean, when they put it back on Harrison Ford, he tried out the original costume, and he fit it like a glove. If Chris Pratt can fit it like a glove, then great. Here's him and Harrison Ford actually side by side. Like all they did was they took a still of Chris in Jurassic World, and they photoshopped his face over Harrison Ford's, added shadow and everything.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring up Jurassic World, because Jurassic World is a Jurassic Park movie, and Alan Grant was criticized for being like a bland Indiana Jones ripoff in the original.
I love Sam Neill as Dr. Grant.
I think that Sam Neill's a great actor. And that is his role. That's what everyone knows him for.
He wore a fedora. So what? His hat was more Indiana Jones-esque in Jurassic Park 3. I think.
Do you know what? I think it's because he looked like him, and because the character doesn't really have much substance to him. So they read traits into him.
Spielberg offered the part to Harrison Ford.
Okay, so how did George Lucas put it again? He didn't want to be his who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Spielberg
Bobby
just doesn't
De Niro.
care. Bobby De Niro. No, Bobby De Niro ain't going to be the other guy's Harrison Ford.
Yeah, that's the best Photoshop out there. It's been circulating for months. I mean, but even before this reboot idea came out, somebody did this, and it was like, whoa, cool. then I was like, lo and behold, the rumors happened. Now the weird thing is, he said it would be cool, but nobody said anything to me yet. But the funny thing is, he turned down the role of Nathan Drake in the upcoming Uncharted movie that they're trying to make.
Oh, interesting.
Something tells me, I think maybe.
I hope so, because do you know what? People predicted Shia LaBeouf, and he was a terrible choice, because Spielberg had mentioned that he wanted to work with him.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say to the idea of him signing on? I know that fans suggest things all the time that don't happen. Like,
what did they want? They
like
want,
getting back to Bilbo
want
Baggins, James McAvoy. They all wanted James McAvoy, and then it was Martin Freeman, and he was great, but he wasn't the person that anyone expected. And I think that almost studio execs want that because they don't want people's expectations to be too specific.
Yeah.
It'll fail, you know, if they are.
I don't know. So what were you saying? Were you talking about the fan rumor that they were just going to do a sequel but have Shia LaBeouf's son of Indiana Jones character?
That was probably what I was thinking, because I know that they were floating that idea.
I don't think George Lucas and Steven were.
Someone
They
might
both-
have been Steven. Steven, for some reason, was just gaga over Shia LaBeouf for a while.
I don't know.
I don't know why.
But I think that scene at the end of Crystal Skull where the hat blows into the door and he picks it up, but Indy snatches it back in time was really a firm thing. Like, it's not Indiana Jones if the lead character is not Indiana Jones swashbuckling.
Yeah.
It's going to be Mutt Williams in the blah, blah, blah or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though he's Henry Jones III.
Yeah.
He still has the Mutt Williams name. I mean, it wouldn't work, and nobody would go for it. Nobody, especially now with how reviled Shia LaBeouf is.
Oh, for sure. Do you know what? I think that they considered doing it, and then that was when they got the idea, you know, he grabs his hat back. We make it think. They toy with the fans' expectations. They're aware that the audience is a real live entity that reacts to what the filmmakers do. And that's a consequence of living in the internet YouTube generation, isn't it?
It wouldn't have worked unless Harrison was in it. And if it was both of them doing, you know, a similar thing to Last Crusade.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. But then if you made too many movies with Shia LaBeouf
Also, they need to bring back Short Round and Sala.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Like,
Sala did a cameo, didn't he, in film 3?
No, they offered him a short cameo at the end at Indy's wedding, and John Rhys Davies said, no, he's one of Indy's sidekicks, so I don't want a cameo.
I swear, no, I mean in Last Crusade, wasn't he briefly?
He wasn't briefly in it. He was in like the middle act and the third act.
My memory is probably
he meets Marcus when he gets to
okay,
and then
it's really funny.
Remember the part with the camels? No, I said no camels. That's 5. Can't you count?
I don't remember that part.
Or something like that.
Yeah, no. Do you know what? I have probably the worst memory for film 3.
No, but Sala is in it.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, I knew he was in it. That's why I was confused.
But he's in a bigger role than you thought.
This is it. When I said the last movie, in my heart, and also because I haven't seen Crystal Skull, the last movie is Last Crusade.
The only reason the only other reason that Crystal Skull was a disappointment in one part is because like there's no Short Round, and Short Round was a great sidekick in the second like Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Like where did he go after that? Like I mean he was supposed to be, Indy was supposed to be sort of like his guardian.
Yeah. I
mean, that could have been a good cameo, and who could have played him other than Ki-Hai Kwan, or Jonathan Ki-Hai Kwan?
Yeah.
He was in. The only other thing I saw him in was Goonies, but I mean I think he'd be up for it. He'd be up for doing another Indy.
Oh, for sure.
Like they shouldn't do it unless it's him. I mean, there was like some idea floating around where they wanted Jackie Chan to play him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That would have been too obvious.
And now people are like, oh, Steven Yeun should play him.
Yeah. I doubt that they'll actually do that, though. Just because, like, he feels like... I mean, again, I wouldn't mind seeing it, but he feels like a character who's, like, a one-off thing. Marion's different, because she seems to have real meaning for Indy. But the rest of them feel like characters, they come and they go, which is that Bond sensibility that the series has. Anyway, that's just how I see it.
So,
but it would be cool for him to meet Shorty again when he's grown up.
Yeah, And to do that, they have to have Harrison Ford in the next Indiana Jones. I
Yeah.
mean, they should really, set the record straight. What happens?
A
to all these
cameo would be nice.
They
A
should
cameo would be
really
nice.
end the book on all these characters before they, go full on reboot. Which is why they should have, liberal amounts of Harrison Ford and then Chris Pratt, as flashbacking. That's one way to do it, to settle in. Then they can do some like a new trilogy
with Chris Pratt.
And
I like the idea.
You like that?
Yes.
Because I think if they had so many characters playing Indy, like in Young Indiana Jones, they had Corey Carrier as the Young Indiana Jones. Then they had Sean Patrick Flannery as a young man Indiana Jones. And Last Crusade, what the whole beginning, the whole pre sequence was, young Indiana Jones played by River Phoenix.
Yeah. Sure. And
so if they can have those actors play Indiana Jones, why is it such a bad idea to make new Indiana Jones movies with a new actor?
Oh, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's more how people would react. There's nothing wrong with anything in principle if you pull it off well. It's all about the fans.
I mean, I think for going back to, like, we talked about Star Trek before we started doing this.
Mm-hmm.
The Star Trek reboot.
Yeah.
Worked well because the cast was good.
Yeah, and also because they were deliberately saying this is its own separate thing.
And also that they deliberately put in
Spock,
to
Leonard
pass the
Nimoy.
torch.
Yes.
God rest his
That
soul.
really was a brilliant idea. I wouldn't have minded them doing their own reboot off in its own universe, like a reimagining of the
But
show.
I think the way they did it...
But the fans wouldn't have had it. They wouldn't have had it.
The way they did it really fits with the science fiction, that it's an alternate reality created by a black hole.
Yeah, and we've already established, like so many fans have said, that
That
there is time travel in that universe.
But in that way,
Yeah.
you can always go back to the prime universe.
Yeah.
And what happens, post, blah blah blah. That's what they're doing.
Well,
with Star Trek Online.
who knows what they're going to do for the next one? I've heard that it's supposed to be more similar to the tone of the original series.
Yeah, the next one should be some. There should be some exploration.
I'm really, really looking forward to that.
It's the 50th anniversary, so they.
I
want to
get back to some of that, the old-fashioned Star Trek.
I think that's what they're going to do, because that at the end of Into Darkness was the start of the 5-year mission.
Yeah.
Maybe they can kind of fill in some of the last half of the 5-year mission.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the original series, it ends in the 3rd year of the 5-year mission.
That's right.
And then they were going to try to do phase 2, which failed.
Yeah, they were.
Maybe they can kind of, ease into it like something like that. There's a lot of fan productions that fill the gap, but whatever. Who cares? I mean, those are good in their own right to see people talented.
That would be so cool if after 50 years they finally finished the mission.
It'll be an alternate reality of the mission, but if you want to go back and fill in those gaps, you have fan films like Star Trek Continues.
Yeah, oh sure.
Have you seen Star Trek Continues?
No, but I know of it. I've seen bits of it.
It's got Chris, it has Chris Doohan in it.
I think I downloaded it or something at some point. I never watched it.
The Kirk is good, and they have Chris Doohan playing Scotty, who is the son of James.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's really good. So I guess you're with me on this, that doing a new Indiana Jones with Chris Pratt wouldn't be such a bad idea.
No,
if it's done right.
That would be great if it was done right.
He's the best choice. Do you agree with that? That he's the best by far out of any other actors. He's the best choice.
Yeah. I absolutely agree as far as I'm concerned. As far as what I've seen, I haven't put as much thought into the topic as you have, but I do really strongly appreciate those original movies.
People are saying,
I know it would be hard to do that in a way that satisfies me, but your idea works with me.
Usually it's always some actor you don't like, but
yeah.
Another suggestion they had was Bradley Cooper. He was rumored.
Mm.
I love Bradley Cooper. I think he's done good in like American Sniper and other things. He's not Indiana Jones.
No,
he could be Nathan Drake in Uncharted though.
Yeah, I think
that's
so.
a whole other ball game. If they do the Uncharted movie, it has to be. I think it should be Bradley Cooper.
Yeah,
I think he really can fit the Nathan Drake mold, which is he's a bit more of a John McClane than he is an Indiana Jones. He's a swashbuckling Indiana Jones version of John McClane with a lot of wisecracks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
John McClane was a wisecracking kind of character, though.
I really like. You're one of like the first Indiana Jones fans like me who I've encountered in real life.
You don't meet Indiana Jones fans?
I know some of my friends, but I don't know if they're.
I always thought those were like.
I don't know if they're really on the fence or not. I know my best friend. I don't think he thinks it's a bad idea to do a new Indiana Jones, but a lot of people on the IMDb boards are really on the fence. Oh, this is terrible, or oh, this is really the best choice for what you have. Because
I mean, as a prequel, I should probably clarify. I totally understand them not wanting to expand the series and do reboots or remakes, but I mean, as a prequel idea, having Chris Pratt in it.
what I think, if they want to really bookend old Indiana Jones and then go to that, another thing, the time period.
Yeah.
They should make it a 60s kind of spy thriller somehow.
But if you get Indy too close to the modern age, he becomes anachronistic.
I know.
And
I'm just saying they should end it in the 60s.
Yeah.
With a spy-ish type thriller, because but it would bring the circle back. It would bring the circle back to its roots, which is James Bond.
True. It would need to be early 60s.
Yeah.
It would need to be like 1962 or 1963 at the very latest.
Definitely like 1962. Just to bring that reference to Dr. No, like
Yeah.
to full
Yeah, that would be interesting.
references to Dad.
It would be hard to sell it though, because I think so many fans have a bitter taste in their mouth of that let's bring Indy into the 1950s thing. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. It seems
It was
out
the
of place
logical
for
choice
me.
to go. If they hadn't waited so far, maybe we would have had one in the 1940s.
Maybe we would have, but what
But here's the thing: they
what
waited.
I mean is not so much whether it was a logical choice. Of course, it was given his age, but is it a choice that makes sense for the series? Does it make sense to bring those two very different worlds into conflict?
I don't know. I just think it would be to bring that cycle, the spiritual cycle, back to James Bond. I mean, they could
it's an original idea to link it up with James Bond.
They could have some spies into the story, maybe chasing this MacGuffin. Have some British agents, and then maybe the OSS or the CIA calls Indiana Jones back into duty one last time because.
I'll have to sleep on this one.
Okay, but I'm just saying in his backstory for Crystal Skull in the 40s he worked OSS in the war.
Yeah.
I mean those are some great. They would have made great movies if they'd have been quicker about it.
Yeah.
I mean if they did it in the 90s that would have been great. Harrison Ford would have been,
They all wanted to. I don't know why they didn't.
It would have been perfect because he would have been playing Indy in his 40s, even though he was in his 50s, but he looks 10 years younger all the time.
There was Spielberg, actually. Now I'm remembering. It was Spielberg didn't want to. That's why, they were so reticent to come back.
They were really just struggling to find a good idea.
Yeah.
They ended up with Aliens, but, okay.
At least we can be thankful that it wasn't worse, because if that was the good idea...
That's what I say. People think Crystal Skull was bad, but it really wasn't a horrible train wreck. It could have been much worse. I mean, I think they did a commendable job. I mean... And it was good to see Harrison Ford back. Because you can't get enough of Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford's just, he has that draw about him.
Yeah.
He's the guy you root for no matter how old he gets. And, I mean...
He had a strength of presence that you wouldn't get in this generation because people just aren't socialized like that anymore. And I'm not saying that that's good necessarily. I'm just saying... He has that very old kind of rugged outdoorsy sensibility that...
He was the best movie president out there.
Yeah, I'll tell
Get off my plane.
Yeah.
Well, that's another ball game.
Yeah,
we're running out of time, so we can't
God,
really go off on that.
God only knows. I could never pull off a performance like Harrison Ford's. I don't know anyone who
in
can.
anything.
Yeah.
Even The Fugitive.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, we're wrapping up, but I hope you guys have enjoyed our talks on Indiana Jones and other subjects, as always. And hope that it's made you think a little bit about what you would like to see for the series if they choose to go on with it, and whether you think they should go on with it at all.
Yeah. In our next podcast, I should really preface, we're going to be getting into some deep territory again.
Yes, we are. We are getting into cults, which was going to be this podcast, but we found out we had more time.
It kind of ties into Indiana Jones, There's some occult things, but
Well,
we're not
cults
gonna
and the
go.
occult aren't quite
We're
the same
going.
thing.
We're going into real life cults and some of the bad stuff and the good stuff.
Yeah. It's very heavy. Don't let the kiddies listen.
Yeah, expect a little bit of Waco talk, some Jonestown talk, and I was surprised to learn John wasn't as well versed as I am in the West Memphis 3, which was a cult related crime story.
Yeah.
So you'll do your research on that.
I will.
And watch all that stuff. I better get that to you. I'm gonna have a friend come in hopefully and talk about this. We're still getting the schedules aligned, but hopefully it all works out, and we have sort of a third wheel to
As is fitting for a subject like this.
bounce
I
off
think.
of.
Yeah. We need someone to kind of bring us away from our very dark, serious rants in some of these subjects. Or maybe I'm more dark and serious. I don't know if you're quite as dark and serious. I know you can't.
You're the generator on the reactor.
Reference to Valerie Geller. I don't know what kind of generator I am. I just think of subjects to talk about. That's all I do.
All right.
I also got something I'm thinking about. But yeah,